Welcome everyone to today's session, which is about Sitecore search. We are going to have a bit of technical deep dive into how Sitecore search works, how as a marketer you can set up certain certain features on the back end, and how you should be integrating to Sitecore search if you have existing online channels like websites and things like that. You might have seen other demos as well from our colleagues, and also the MVP channel has been talking about, the MVP network has been talking a lot about Sitecore search, because it's a beautiful product, and you will figure out why I'm saying this. But in today's session, I will try to cover some of this stuff that I think when I started working from a developer's perspective, I thought there are certain things that are missing in there. And every developer who starts off with Sitecore search, they struggle a bit at the start. And those are the things I thought maybe we should have a talk about it, so everyone who is planning to do an implementation using Sitecore search can benefit from. Sitecore search enables the brands worldwide to present the highly relative and personalized content to its online visitors, based on AI and certain manual configurations that you have control over as a marketing person. When it comes to the relevance of the results based on Sitecore search, Sitecore search provides you features like the textual relevance and the personalization and faceting and filtering, and there are a lot of things. Honestly, it would be really difficult to cover each and every aspect of it. So what I have done, I have chosen certain things for today's session, and what I'll do is we can have a follow-up session if people would be interested in, just to cover the rest of it going forward. But what we are going to talk about today, it should set you up for success with Sitecore search implementation. Cool. What we are going to have, Sitecore.com, the website that we have, that is empowered. The search on that website is empowered by the Sitecore search product itself. So in our agenda, what we will be doing as the first thing is to go through Sitecore.com and have a look at how Sitecore.com personalizes the content for you when you're going onto the search pages, and what sort of capabilities Sitecore.com is using from this particular platform. Then we will look into CEC. CEC is called as Customer Engagement Console in Sitecore search, and that's the dashboard or the back end of Sitecore search. That's where that's where you start configuring all the stuff. You get admin rights for the users and all that stuff. Then we will jump onto the integration options. And one of them is, of course, the Sitecore has provided a starter kit for Sitecore search that is based on the React SDKs. It has UI elements as well. We will look into that. But it's more opinionated in terms of UI, how the UI would look like. But we know that at some point you might be integrating Sitecore search to certain websites that are not really that you're building from scratch. They're already there, and what you want to do is just using the custom UI that is already there to integrate search with that. So what are options we have in there? We will look into that as well. And then all the search features. So we will be talking through these search features along the way. We might not be following the agenda exactly as is, but the first part of today's talk is more around the search capabilities and how we configure them in CEC, and the second part is more around the integration using the starter kit, the SDKs, and the custom UI. And at the end, we will open the floor for questions and answers, and if there will be any questions. If we couldn't cover any questions, I'll be more than happy to respond to those questions you can leave in the chat, and we can I can respond to any, and she can. I'm sure there will be a way to share it with the wider audience, or you will have my contact information, and then you can ask directly as well if you want to. My name is Akhtar. You would see there is a word Syed at the start of it on my LinkedIn profile and everywhere. That's how the naming convention is back in my country where I grew up. But that is not really the name. It's something like Mr. Akhtar Zahur, for instance. So I work as a lead partner technical advisor with Sitecore since 2021. And when I joined Sitecore, these products were being acquired or were just acquired. And then we started looking into those products and realized that our partners will have a bit of hard time developing with these products, because there are a number of products that we have, and I just have a slide just to run you through briefly what I mean by that. And that's where this particular team of partner technical advisor was set up, just to help out the partners with implementations using these different products. I work in the content space mostly, and with XM Cloud, Sitecore Search, and some other content products that we have, and also on the engagement cloud where we have CDP and Personalize and Sitecore Send. By the way, that's my email address. I'll just leave it there at the end as well. So the team that I'm part of, this team provides implementation assistance to the partners. So if you work with a partner and you start development with one of the products that I just mentioned, or any of the products except XM and XP that we used to have prior to 2020, those are not in our scope. But other than that, if you're developing with any of the products, and if you need assistance, you can always reach out to me or your partner manager, and we can set up a complimentary service from Sitecore that can help you and assist you with the development. We have divided all the products that we offer today into 3 different clouds, and Sitecore Search is one of these blue hexagons that you see, and we call them Content Cloud, because search primarily is going to be used for the content websites. There is Discover as well on the top, which will be rebranded as Search for Commerce, and that will be used for the commerce websites where you will have the ability to be able to search for the products and things like that. So with that, I'll just jump onto my browser, and let's say I go to Sitecore.com. The search page on Sitecore.com, I have started this in an incognito window just to share some stuff with you. When you first time visit this particular page, you see that there is a lot of content here that is coming. It says first one is about a product, other one is about the customers and things like that. But this content, if you see, this is all over the place. It gives me each and everything. At this point, Sitecore Search doesn't really know about me. This content that you see here, it is coming from Sitecore Search at the moment. It is indexed in Sitecore Search, and all these tiles that are being rendered here, they are empowered by Sitecore Search. And you can see it here, powered by Sitecore Search as well. If I was a bit known to this, and rather than starting an incognito window, I was in a cognitive window, then Sitecore Search would know a bit about me, and I would just share what I mean by that. Let's say if I go into the products and I am interested in Order Cloud, for instance, which is an e-commerce product, I start browsing a bit on Order Cloud, and then go into a few pages, for instance, here, just to let this know that I am looking for something around Order Cloud or Discover. And at this point, if I at this point, if I jump back to Sitecore search page, you will start noticing that it will start giving me some personalized content around the e-commerce. The second tile that you see here, it says the benefits of personalization in e-commerce, headless commerce, and blah blah B2C, and things like that. So what Sitecore search has started doing it here is started personalizing this content that comes for me. Just note that I haven't started searching for anything yet. This is just purely based on my browsing history, purely based on the pages that I'm viewing here. This particular page, if you look at this page, there are multiple components or sections that you will be seeing here. On the top, we have this search bar, whereas on the left side, this is where we are seeing certain facets, and these facets, if I click any of these facets and tick for it, you will see that that content on the right side here will start getting filtered, and this all is empowered by Sitecore search. On the top, you will see these are sort options, and if you look at this middle area where all the content is being rendered, this is what we call as the search results. Search results are also called widget 7 in Sitecore search world, because in Sitecore search, everything that you see here, it is being rendered or it is being returned as a widget to the front-end application, and then front-end applications use those widgets to render the HTML. Why we call it widget 7? Just because the ID of that widget, which is in charge of returning these results, is called widget 7. If I click on this search here and I start typing something, let's say personalize, you see that there is a box for suggestions here. It starts coming up. Now these are the suggestions, and these suggestions are also coming from Sitecore search. We call them suggestion blocks in Sitecore search. And if you will, if I was on the home page rather than on the search page here, for instance, if I was on the sitecore.com page, and if I go to the top search here, and if I start typing personalization, for instance, you see there are two columns now. On the left column, I am seeing again the suggestions, and when I hover over a suggestion on the right side, it starts showing me the actual content that exists in Sitecore search. And this actual content that you see, we call it the preview. This is again a widget that is in charge of showing me the preview of the results that come from this. At this point, if I click on a suggestion, you will see that that suggestion becomes a query string in Sitecore search on the Sitecore search page. That's how this experience has been designed. Of course, you will have the option to change it, but I'm just sharing like how Sitecore.com has done it and how you would be able to do it for yourself as well, for instance. But it has become a search phrase, and then you will see that these records here, they are all these search results here, they are based on this search phrase or search term, or as we call it. If I just go back just to share one more thing here before we start looking into the SDK or things like that. If I search for persona, let's say, and rather than clicking on a suggestion, if I click on in the preview, if I click on one of the tiles, you will see that I am taken directly to that particular article. This is because the preview widget displays you the actual content just like the results widget. And if I was on the search page again for a second, and if I was clicking on one of the tiles here, then it will give you exactly the same experience as you were clicking through on the preview. And that gives us an idea that the preview widget that we have and the results widget that we are seeing, they're based on the same content that is coming from Sitecore search. Okay, so just to see like how Sitecore has developed this, we have a starter kit from Sitecore that the teams at Sitecore have created for us. So if I go to github.com and Sitecore, and if I try to /Sitecore, and if there I try to search for repositories, for instance, I go search repositories I'm after, you will see there are two different repositories here. One is the JS SDK, the other one is the TS SDK. Because I like the TypeScript one, which is the TS SDK, what I did is I went ahead in this one and I cloned it on my local. I got this URL here to clone it, and then I did that on my local. If you will go through the README, it will tell you how you can quickly set it up and what sort of things you will require. I think the most important one here is the environment variables that are required for authentication and integrating it to a particular search environment. What I have done is I've created an env file on my local, and that's where I have configured it. It also runs you through if you get a sandbox or a search environment that is clean, there are no widgets configured and nothing in there, then you will need to set up some suggestion blocks and search sorting option. So it's a pretty good documented README file that will run you through some of the steps that are required to run this particular starter kit on your local machine. So what I've done is, okay, cool. I have cloned it on my local here, and I created this env file and then a local version of it, which contains the values, but it contains three different variables: the environment, the customer key, and the API key. When we go into the search, into the back end of the search, we will see where to get exactly these values. But at the moment, just to share that you just need to provide these three values. And once you give these three values, it will start working for you. And after that, what I've done is I have run npm install in a terminal, and then after npm install, I have run npm run dev. And once you run it, it starts running on your local host 5173, this particular port. If I go here and I start running this, you will see that it is something similar to the results that are coming up here. There's something similar to sitecore.com. If I go to the search page here that we have in the starter kit, you will see exactly the same thing. There is a search bar on the top that shows a preview. If you search for something, it should start coming up with some suggestions, for instance. Sorry, I don't know. So suggestion on the left, and if you hover over suggestion, then the preview on the right. Then you have these facets on the left, the search results and sort options and all that stuff. Just to go a bit one step ahead, and if I try to see exactly what is being done here, if I go to the network tab, for instance, and I just put a v2. V2 is the API that gets called at the end when we call search. I'm putting a filter for V2 just to avoid a lot of noise that is there. And if I refresh this, you will see that there are two numbers. There are two APIs that have a name as a number, and this number is your domain ID. A domain ID is nothing but it's the ID of your environment that you get for Sitecore search. And if I go to one of them, one is the pre-flight, of course, and if I go into the actual call that is going out, and if I look into the payload of this, there are two main objects that are being passed to the payload. One is the context, and other one is the widget. The context defines the locale, who's the user and the page that you are on. There could be other things in locale as well. We will see that, but the main thing that you see here is there is a UUID that gets created. This UUID, I'm just going to copy the value of this because I might need it later on, but this UUID is a unique ID that gets generated for every session that starts with Sitecore search. So because it's a stateless web, we just calls Sitecore search over an API. to maintain a bit of session for the user and collect some behavior data of the current website visitor or the user. Sitecore search creates a cookie. This cookie is generated by the SDK, and then it uses this cookie to maintain that session and then ingest all the events and send all the events from the website, like what I'm viewing, what I'm clicking on, and things like what I'm searching for. All this information gets collected against this UUID into Sitecore search. And the second one that you would see here is the widget for the request. So if we expand that, we see that there is a widget 7 and 6, both of them that we are requesting. As I mentioned, the preview one is called RFK ID 6, which is the preview widget. If you will expand this, you will see the details of that as well. And the 7 one, but if you, what I think the important thing to note here is that both are returning an entity which is called the content. So they are actually returning the content. The search for RFK7 that you will see, it contains facet and also the sort options. So these facets that you see on the left side or the sort option that you see on the top, they are returned as part of RFK ID7. If you're wondering why it is called RFK, Sitecore search was formerly known as reflection. That's where all this came into being. So the preview that you see here, that is coming from this RFK 6 request, and we are saying that you should return us this preview, and also highlight if there is a query, then I'll start highlighting that. So for instance, if I was searching for something, let's say persona, as I was doing in there, then this particular call, if I go into the last one, you will see for RFK6, for instance, and the RFK7, we are also passing a query against, I don't know what has happened here, but it should be passing on. Yeah, so it passes this key phrase as personal. And for this, against this personal, we are getting the results. And if I go into the preview of the results, for instance, you will see that it is returning us the suggestions that we are displaying here, and that it is also returning us the preview items as well, which is inside the content here. However, if I was to look into let's say into widget 7, like if I see the response for widget 7, then you will see that the response for widget 7 is not just the content, but also it returns a list of facets that we are displaying on the left side here, and it also contains the sorting options and all that. The reason I'm just running through all the details here is just when we go into CEC, it will make a bit more sense for us to have a look like what exactly are the options and how we are configuring this. Just to notice that there are only 2 facets that we have set up, and then there are 3 different sorting options and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much how this is working. I mean, from a user perspective, if you look, this is not really a developer's perspective, but a bit of how the developers would look into what's happening around for all this to work. Cool. So at this point, if I just go into the CEC, so this is the console. I have already logged in here just to save a bit of time for myself. If you are new to Sitecore Search and you start developing for something, either you will get a client environment that you can use for this development, or you will be able to get a sandbox from Sitecore. And once you get a sandbox from Sitecore, you will get access to things, something like CECs, .sitecorecloud.io. This is being changed as we talk about, so don't be surprised if you are getting access through the Sitecore Cloud portal, which is portal.sitecorecloud.io. If you if you get access through that, then that's a different, that it will become an app on that portal and you will be able to access it from that. But nevertheless, you access it from here or from the portal. The UI and everything should remain consistent. I haven't looked into an environment where I have access through the Sitecore portal, but um, I usually I have the ones that are that I get directly this particular URL, and then there is a domain ID that uniquely identifies this particular environment. Now, one of the things you would have noticed here is when I was running that particular SDK and was showing you the number that represents, which is 1598, and I was saying that this is your domain ID. This is exactly the one that we were talking about here. Cool. So this on the C's, when you get onto the CEC on the homepage, you see some analytics here. I'm not going into too much details of it, but once you set up everything, you will start seeing some of the details. And then you can, at the end, I'm not going into the sequence again, just because I want to make sure that we understand and we go in a bit of sequence that is more logical to this talk. So if I go into the administration here on the left side, which is the settings cog, you will see there are a lot of options for me because I'm a global admin, but you might not be. So you will only get access to, for example, domain settings and manage users depending on if you're an admin. If you go into the domain settings, this is where we start setting up the schema. So the first thing that you will do as a Sitecore Search developer is to model your documents. Everything in Sitecore Search is a document itself. And when we talk about the modeling of your document, that means you need to understand what data you have to collect in Sitecore Search so that you can start analyzing that in Sitecore Search and start creating your experiences on the website. And that's where it's really important. If you see, there are a lot of attributes that we have got. An attribute is the building unit of a particular document. It's a property of a document. Sitecore Search comes with few different as an out of box. So what is the ID of your document? What is the description of it? And things like that. So even if you look at any web page, for example, a web page will have a title and that title will become an attribute here. Then it might have an image for itself and that image will become the image URL. And then the URL of that page will become the URL attribute and things like that. However, those out of box will not be enough in most of the cases. So you have the option to create your own ones here. There are a lot of different data types that you can use, like array strings, float, numbers, composites, and things like that. You will have based on the type of that particular attribute, you will be able to choose them. We can choose them. Once you have set up these attributes here, the next thing that you need to start doing is how all this content will land into your environment, which you are going to use for analysis. So for instance, with Sitecore.com, we have been crawling few different websites. So Sitecore Search has the notion of sources. This is where you define your source and you say, okay, I want the content from an API. I want the content from this website and that website. Once you get the content from all those sources, and it becomes it becomes available in Sitecore Search, that's where we start creating those suggestions and previews and the search results that we have. When you have the option to create as many sources as you want, of course. And main thing about creating a source is that a source would have few different sections. And the main ones that I'm not going into too much details again into the sourcing because this is more of a user thing, not really a developer. Sometimes you will need, of course, some developer tactics as well. But even if you look into the documentation, you will be able to look at it like how these sources are. But because we really need to understand how this content is making its way into Sitecore Search, that's where I think it's important to just talk about this. So when you create a source, you can create a source based on a sitemap, or you can have just a URL. So let's say this one is created based on a sitemap trigger. So a sitemap is going to trigger it. I give the URL of the sitemap, and then I say, okay, you need to, how you should be extracting a document out of these URLs that are in the sitemap. And this is where I have multiple options to create an extractor. I can use an XPath, a JS, or a CSS. JS is the quite common one that is used because that gives you a bit more flexibility into reading something and doing something about it. You just create an extract function, and Sitecore search injects a request and response. The response contains the whole body of the page that is being crawled, and then that's where you start looking into the tags information and start doing that. And once you are done with this, so once you have set up these sources and everything, um, this is where you trigger these sources, and Sitecore search starts crawling these different sources to create the content for you. Then you go into the content section here, which is the content collection. You see two different heads. One is the visitor and the other one is the content. If you go inside the content, you will see that all the documents that have been indexed by Sitecore search here. These documents then become a basis for Sitecore search to analyze based on different analyzers that that are available for us in Sitecore search, and we use them to break these into tokens and things like that to match at the runtime and generate those suggestions and search them against the search queries. Okay, cool. So one of the things that I just said is we will see how to get that customer key and the API keys to authenticate that we were looking into when we were looking into the SDK. You see that you go into the developer's resources here on the left side, and there is a customer key, and then there are API keys that are available here. You can just copy from here and then start using them. In the developer sources, another important thing is the API Explorer. We will see this quickly, but there is something called Event Builder and then the Event Viewer. If you have your custom events, you can use the Event Builder to build your own events. For the Event Monitor, I had copied that UUID, if you remember. If I start monitoring here, and when I look into this, and if I go back and I start searching for something, or I click on any of the things here, you will notice that if it is working, I'm not sure what's going on. So if I start, let's say, searching for something and then click on a personalization, so on a suggestion, for instance, and if I go back here, you see that it is now monitoring all the events that are coming into Sitecore search. So it's a really good tool for as a developer that you will be able to use when you are working with events. Either they're the ones that are tracked out of box for you in SDK, or the ones that you're planning on building by yourself. Yeah, so that's pretty much from the developer sources. We will have a look into some of the other stuff as well. But going back into the domain settings, if you go here, once you have defined your attributes, this is where you get the option to start configuring your features as well. And if you go into the feature configuration under this admin settings here, you will see these names will make more sense now, the ones that these terminologies that I was using. When we looked at Sitecore, Sitecore.com, the first thing that we saw was the personalization of the content, and that's being configured here under the personalization. If I go into the personalization, this is, I think one of the things that I would like to mention here is that these configurations that you define here, these are not going to impact the search results directly. These are the base configurations. And then based on these base configurations, we define some widget configurations. We call them global widget configurations. And those global widget configurations are then impacting directly. So for example, for personalization, I have defined 10 or 5, 6 different attributes here. I'm saying it could be based on interest or title or subtitle or a product, but I do have the option to just pick some of them. The reason why we set up these ones here, because when sources are being crawled, when the crawlers are running, they use these configurations to tokenize and index all the documents in a way that they can later on be used against that one. For the suggestion blocks that we had a look at, if we go into the if we just look into this one, the suggestion blocks is the we have configured 3 different suggestion blocks here, and these 3 different suggestion blocks are based on certain analyzers that we have defined, but we will be using 1 or 2 out of these in the global configuration. Our suggestions, the suggestions that you see against a particular term, they are being controlled by this configuration here. An important understanding, an important aspect of Sitecore search is the analyzers. So analyzers are the algorithms that are running on the background to let you define how Sitecore search will index the documents, and when you are searching for something, how it is going to match it against them. There are multiple analyzers here. You can look into any of those, like how to use them. We usually start with the multi-locale one, which knows about your, the language and all, and it tries to. So let's say this multi-locale standard analyzer, it creates lowercase strings that we are searching for, and then keeps them and tokenizes them into multiple, and then saves them. And then whenever we are searching against something, it just goes and starts looking into and starts matching those terms against the index documents. There are a lot of analyzers. Just to let you know that when you will be developing a Sitecore search, you will have the option to look into all of those and then use the ones that make more sense for your experience. So for instance, in Sitecore, you will see that we are using mostly the multi-locale and a variation of it. So suggestion blocks are the ones that impact the suggestions in there. The sorting options, we have set up multiple sorting options, but you have seen that we only have available 3 of them, not all of them. That's because we have defined them in the global widget. Textual relevance is the one which defines, if I'm searching for personal, for example, what are the things, what are the documents that should appear against, what the preview should be generated against that personal keyword. And all that is controlled by the textual relevance. Here again, textual relevance gives you the control over, gives you this control to configure your analyzers, and whatever analyzers that make sense for you, you can start using them. The analyzers that you set up for in these configurations here, they are the ones that will become available for you to use. We are still not configuring them for our website. On the left side, if you keep going up, there is a section for global resources, and if you click on global resources, for example, this is where you see a global widget. Again, you will not see all these options as a tech admin, but some of them will be there available for you. When you go into the global widget here, you see then again into the global widget settings, you will see most of those settings configurations that we have defined there. And this is the place which really impacts what is being returned to the front end. If you remember the RFK7 result that we have seen here, which gives you sorting option, facets, and all that, they are being controlled from this global widget setting here. So under the facets, let's say we have created a product and a type. Whereas for textual relevance, we are using title, description, and subtitle, and we are using multi-locale analyzer. This is where we define the weights for each of these analyzers, and we say for the title has the highest weight, which means if the search term has a match against the title, it should come on the top. And if it has on the description, the title ones should be on the top, and then followed by description, and then the subtitle, which has a weight of 1. You have the option to change these weights to make it more relevant for the things. And similarly, if you go into personalization, for example, what we have done here is there are 2 modes with the personalization that you can set. One is called more like this, and otherwise is affinity. Affinity looks into your past, each and every browsing history, and then tries to suggest you some documents. Whereas more like this is more of just looking into the documents you are really interacting with, and just presents you something, the similar documents and to you. So the personalization demo that we saw in the start for Sitecore.com, that is using more like this, and it is based on either the product attribute or the title, wherever it matches. For the sorting option, you saw that we configured a lot of them, but we are only using Relevance, oldest, and the newest one. And for the suggestion blocks here, I'm using the title suggester, and this title suggester is using an n-gram analyzer, which breaks down every word into n-grams into small words, and then whenever we are searching for a term, it matches against those suggestion blocks and then starts displaying those suggestions. So yeah, that's pretty much on the CEC side, that you have the option to configure. If you are not a developer, and if you're just a marketing person, for instance, these analytics will make a lot of sense for you. And the most important one is the keywords here, and this gives you the ability to look into what people are searching for. If I go into the details of it, my favorite one is the null keyword search. Null results. It's taking a bit of time. It's obviously a bit slow, but if you once it comes up, you'll see there's a report at the end which gives you the null searches, and this helps you a lot to see which terms are not giving us the correct results. So you have the option to either do something about them. For example, you can define synonyms for them. So let's say personally, this is one of the search term that doesn't produce any results. What you can do is you go into your global resources and define a synonym for personally, and say it is personalized. Actually, someone is trying to search for personalized, so let's give them the results for personalized if they're searching for this particular term. So yeah, that's pretty much how these things have been set up. And if I go back into a bit more detail of this the starter kit that we have created here, this is a standard React application that has been developed. So as a developer, you will have the option to start your development of Sitecore Search, integration of Sitecore Search using the starter kit, or if you have your custom UI, we'll see that shortly, like how you should approach that one. Just like any other React application, the app.tsx is the entry point. And in the app.tsx, if you go there, you will notice that there are 2 SDKs that we have imported. We have installed them, and one of them is the React, and the other one is the UI components. Both come from Sitecore Search. Now, this React one gives you the components to develop and query these results from search, whereas the UI gives you the capability to build those UIs, the preview and the search results, and the drop down for sorting and things like that. They all come out of box for you. You have the option to create your theme as a developer and then start using that within your application. If I go into the app section here, you will see that all the routes that we have created here, they are being wrapped into something called widgets provider. And widgets provider is the one which takes in the environment name, the customer key, and the API key to authenticate against Sitecore Search environment. And this takes care of the authentication for all the routes that exist within this widgets provider. If I go into the route, which is site/search route, the one that we were looking into, you will see that this is using these components from the UI, like the themes and all the other components that are being styled here. One of the main component that it is using, it's called Sitecore search results. Now, just like we have in the CEC, we saw the widget 7 and widget 6. What we are doing here is that we are creating the widgets in this React application just like that. So you will see that these search results exist under the widgets folder here. So we have created a preview widget, a questions widget, a search result widget, and all. So against every widget that is created in Sitecore CEC, what we have done is that we have created a component in React that becomes a widget at the end. If you will go into the widgets section here, we didn't really go into the details of this, just we wanted to show you that code first, like how it is working. But in the widget, there are a lot of widgets, but the 6 and 7s are the ones that we are mainly interested in here for today's talk. The 6th one is the one that we are using for preview, and the 7 is the one that we have been using for is the one that we have been using for the search results. Now these widgets, honestly, this if you can define the personalization rules on each widget level as well. You can set up different rules for each widget. You can create multiple variations of the widgets and then assign them traffic like 50-50 and see which particular widget has the better interactivity and which has a better funneling for the visitors who are on the website. So this is how these widgets are being set here. In order to use this widget 6 and widget 7 and call them from the code here, we have created 2 components. One is the preview search, other one is the search results. And these are standard React components which are dependent on the query hooks from the SDK. So let's say if we look into the search result widget here, this search result widget is using use search result widget. This is the query hook. It's again similar to a React query that returns here the results of this particular widget. And this is defined. This comes from the SDK. If you will see on the top, it is coming from Sitecore Search React. Now, what we are doing here is we have created an interface for the article model. So just like we created a schema for our document in Sitecore Search, we have created an interface here, article model, that gives us like what are different attributes of this particular search result that we are getting. And then we are setting certain, these are all optional, of course. We are saying that you should highlight subtitles and descriptions if it matches against a word, and what are the tags, the HTML tags that should be used for making it bold or highlight that. So this search result that you see, this particular query hook is in charge of getting all the results from Sitecore for the widget 7. And once it has executed, you will see that once the loading is done and the fetching is done, what we are doing here is that we are getting the selected facets from the API and then mapping them onto the left side of the screen in there. Similarly, we are matching the facets that exist within each of them and then going through them. And also, if you keep going down, you will see that there are sort choices that are being returned as part of this query hook, and then we are mapping them and adding them to that drop down that is available to us. And finally, the articles is the actual documents, and this is where the middle section where the search results are being displayed. These search results are being generated from this one. So I think as a developer, the main thing, the rest of it is just purely React. If you're across how React works, it's pretty easy to understand this. But the main thing that you need to understand is this query hook that is being used. And the reason I'm saying this, we need to understand this, is because you don't really have they always have the ability to use all this code in your applications, because if you're working with the custom UI, and we will look into that as well shortly, that you might just need to call this use search results query hook, and that should return you all the results that you are looking for. And similarly for preview search component that we have created here, this preview search component is in charge of getting the suggestions and then mapping those suggestions onto that component that gets displayed. And similarly, you will see that it is also generating the preview here and setting up that preview for us. What you will notice is that these are standard React components, but at the end, when we are exporting them, we are not exporting them as just standard events, but we're using this widget function that comes from the SDK to say, okay, this is my preview component, but I want to convert this into a search widget, which will return me the content entity. And that's pretty much, and then I'm exporting this widget as well. And when we are using this, we are using this particular widget inside the search page, for example, inside the search results component here. And similarly for the search result, I'm converting this particular React component into a widget. And this time the type of the widget is search results rather than the preview search. So that's how, if you plan on using the starter kit, that's pretty much how you would be looking into this. One of the things that you will notice is the UI that the components that we are using, they are not styled components. So that's where we style them as per our own requirement. So for instance, for the preview one, if you look at this one here, what we are doing is that we are using this styled function again that comes from the SDK, and then we are passing on our own classes and all the stuff, all the CSS that is required, and then we create a styled component from a normal component that we have got. So for example, this preview search content, we are creating a styled version of it, and then we are using this styled component to display it on the front end website. Cool. If you will look into the styled.ts here, this will give you a bit more idea about what I exactly mean by the styled one. But this is where all the classes and all this all the CSS that we have defined. Now, one of the things you would notice is that the code that we have in the starter kit, you might think as a React developer that you need to clean it up a bit and have a bit better pattern on this. It's up to you. Of course, you can go and do that. This is how Sitecore has provided you the starter kit. The starter kit is nothing but just a boilerplate for you. It gives you a head start. You can go ahead and start customizing it based on your own requirements and based on your needs. However, Sitecore also takes care of these starter kits and keeps pushing new features into it and new things into and new code into this repository. So merging of that new code, that will be your own responsibility. So be mindful when you are making those customizations. If you want to create a different version of something, and if you're relying on the starter kit, you can create a new version rather than overriding the existing one. But even if you override this, that shouldn't be a problem. It's just that when you will be getting the new content, you will have a merge conflict and you will need to resolve that. And similarly, there are other query hooks that have been created in the starter kit. And these query hooks, if you see, I think the most important one is let's say the language one. And if you see, this query hook is being called by the language switcher on the website. And when you switch the language in there, what it does is that it calls this page controller, it gets the context and sets your local language. This page controller again comes from React SDK. So you don't have to worry about how these payloads that we have seen, that they are being generated, how it is getting the context, how it is setting up the cookie and all that. This all is taken care for you by the SDK. What you need to understand, and when you are working with, is what the starter kit is exactly doing. The starter kit is using the SDK and writing just standard React components to render the result of that SDK calls that we have got. So that's pretty much I had to share about the starter kit. But as I mentioned, I know we are running over time, but just will take a couple more minutes here, and apologies for that. It's a Saturday. But as I said at the start, that it's not necessary that all the time you will be using the starter kit. So you might come up with your custom UI and things like that. So what I have done is, on my local, I have another solution which is running on my local. Now, if you look at this is a Next application, it's not a React application, for instance, and it is running on my local, on local host 300, I believe, 3000. Sorry. So if I go to that one, and please don't pay any attention to the UI, it's just a test application that we are using for to connect to CDP and search and all that. I've created a search page here, and if you see these results for these results for the search on the search page, they are coming from Sitecore search. Again, these are using the widget 7 as we call it. And if you start searching for something here, let's say men's, you will see that these suggestions these are not suggestions, because I don't want to use suggestions on my website. I'm just using the widget 6 here, which is the preview search. The preview search returns me these results. And if I click on any of these ones, these are actual documents. And if I click on any of these, for instance, this will lead me to that particular page, rather than start displaying what exactly I'm searching for. So in order to build this one, what I did is, so this was a Next application that I had. I just grabbed it from a GitHub. Someone created it and just started integrating search into it. So I wanted to see how it is going to behave. So there is again a component that is called dynamic search. I didn't do any search integration on that. This was just the one that came out of box. And what I started doing is that I wrapped this into a widget provider. So when it goes into the header on top, I'm wrapping it into a widget provider, giving it again those environment, customer key, and API keys. Once I gave all these things to this particular component, it starts working for me. So what I did is that I converted this component again, similarly using that widget, using that widget function, I converted this dynamic search component into a preview widget. And when I am typing on something against that particular action, I am calling this use preview search, and this is the query hook that is coming from the SDK. It gives me all the results from Sitecore search, and then I start displaying them in here. So when I search for men's, for example, these 3 records that you see, they're coming from preview. This particular component that I have created, when it is coming from the preview search widget that I have defined in Sitecore search. And similarly for the search results, these search results that you see here, they are coming from this widget 7, which is again, I've created a base component that has a widget provider, and this is wrapping my search results widget. And this search result widget is again a React component and I have converted this React component into a widget using that widget function at the end. And I'm using the use search query hook, which should be defined. Yeah, so sorry, use search results widget. This is the query hook that I'm using for it. And when I pass it, the query or the search term, it gets fetches all those results for me, and then I go and map them onto the UI. For UI, everything is just custom. There is nothing that is coming from the SDK. So yeah, that's pretty much that I wanted to cover. Just a bit of recap, like what we literally looked into today is the CEC, looked at analytics, sources, API, and administration. How we are doing that. We looked into different sources, like how we can create sources and extract the data from different websites, for example, or different APIs into Sitecore search, and how we can configure those crawlers. And once we have that data, for the personalization, we looked into how we can start personalizing the results, whether it's more like this or it's based on affinity. We looked into the textual relevance. Again, just to mention, the textual relevance will only impact your search results. So preview search and the search result widget will be taken care by the textual relevance feature. And you can we have seen how we can assign different weights to the search terms, to those attributes, and then to match them against the search term and start displaying them. We looked into the sorting options. We looked into the faceting and the filters, how those filters are being returned by the Sitecore search, and then we start displaying them. Just went through all of these ones. We also looked into the suggestion block. The two solutions that we have seen, one is using the starter kit, and which is using the suggestion blocks. The other one is the one that doesn't use the suggestions. It's totally up to you how you use them. Just a bit of flow, like how Sitecore search exactly works. I just came up with this diagram at the 11th hour, so apologies if something is not clear on this. But when you trigger a search on the site, on your website, the first thing that Sitecore search would do is apply the filters on it. So what I mean by filters is you might have certain sources that you're configuring. So for example, in my application that I had here, I am saying that you should only look for certain sources. Don't go and fetch everything. Sources. Yeah, so I'm saying I'm adding a filter at the start. I'm saying just look at this particular source. Don't look into all the sources. So these filters get applied, and then it looks for pinned and blacklist items. We didn't really go into and looked into pinned and blacklist. This is one of the things that I was saying that we will not be able to cover, but you have the option to pin certain items on the top based on the search terms or based on the user or the locale and things, and those items will always display on top of your search results. If these rules are there, these rules get applied. If they are not, then we match against the key phrase. And when we are matching against the key phrase, this is where the textual relevance and the analyzers that we have configured, they will start getting applied to our search results, and they will produce a search result for us. And then it says if there is a sort order that we have defined, then it sorts according to that. With the sorting options, one of the things that we couldn't really go into the details is your sort order can be defined by the algorithm, or it could be based on the attribute. So let's say you can say all the results should be descending by name, or the title ascending or descending, or I don't want to go with any attribute. What I want to do is that I want to go a bit more personalized way and see what the people are interested in. What are the things that they have been looking at based on their behavior, go and sort it out. So those are the options that you would have. So as a developer, I think the first thing would be, if you want to play around Sitecore search, the first thing that you need to understand is to get a sandbox, of course. If you're working for a partner, you can always get to your contact your partner manager, get the sandbox environment. There are some reference documentations. Again, for one is for Sitecore features, other one is how you can use how you can test those extractors that you define in your sources. There are a couple of different variations of the starter kit that I shared with you. One is based on JS, other one is TS. Um, from the recommendation perspective, these are the common recommendations that we make to all the partners who are developing, or all the development teams, is that if your attributes that you're using for textual relevance, if they are smaller, the results will be highly relevant. And then you should be finalizing your analyzer when you look into what sort of site search experience you want to give. So for example, someone would want to have, let's say we were working with one of the vehicle website, and they said if someone says COR, you should search for everything that is Corolla ABC, Corolla XYZ. That's where you need to understand which analyzer will exactly do the job for you, and things like that. Set up these required events. Always make sure even if you're going with the custom UI, make sure that the Sitecore doc you are following these Sitecore docs to set up the required events. Personalization. If you're not even sure about it, just make a start with more like this, and then keep improving from there on. Just like I shared with you, like that I have a source ID that I have configured. It should have come from the environment variables for me, but it's just the test code. But you should make them configurable. Later on, if you add new sources, they will not start interrupting your live websites, because they are not configured to be used by the website. Suggestion blocks can be very handy in cases where users are making typing mistakes. So for those typos and things like that, the suggestion block could be very handy. But of course, it depends if clients want to go ahead with that. There are a lot of things that we couldn't cover from Sitecore Search, like semantic search or FAQs, the recommendation widgets, the entities, pin and bury. Entities is something that is going to be really crucial in the future. And this is where Sitecore Search is coming up with different types of entities, where you will be able to, rather than saying this is one document, you will say I have stores in my content, I have products in my content, I have articles in my content, I have blogs in my content, and things like that. And there are pin and bury rules. There are other things as well that we didn't really cover, and that was intentional because of in the interest of time. And that's pretty much for today, and apologies for running quite over time.
No worries.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Akhtar, for taking the time. I think there was one question. Nikita, feel free to unmute yourself and ask if you'd like.
Sure. My question was more related to the results that are returned. So I'm working on this POC where we have set, the document extractor, and it's a multilingual POC that we're trying to achieve and so on. And what's happening is if the search term that we are trying to search for, if it's just one word, say corporate, returns proper results. But if it's two words, say corporate responsibility or say group policies, then the results are not as expected. These are like some of the simple terms I spoke about for which we get a lot of results, but some unique words, if there are two words, the results, the page doesn't even come up in the results. So how should we configure phrase-based search and things like that?
Okay, so one of the things that
Then,
maybe I think we need to understand is that there is no exact match. So even if you're defining two different words, the Sitecore Search will go ahead and try to split them into two different words, and even based on your analyzer, split them further, those words as well, and then match them against them. Sitecore Search doesn't support, at this point, it doesn't support the exact matches. So for example, if you're saying corporate group policies, these are three words, and just match those three words in Sitecore Search, that's not really there. although there is a feature request that has been made for exactly for that,
Understood.
but it is still not there.
Understood. And I have another question with respect to again a multilingual website. So, in Sitecore search, we need to configure first the different languages, right, that we need. For an instance, the languages that we may have in Exemplar or in normal Sitecore instance, they are different than what are in search because we have the language code hyphen the country code setting. So, if it's website uses just the language plain English or plain, FR, then I've seen that we have to have, ENTT, FRTT, and we have to configure the local extractor, the document extractor, so that it understands that localization is enabled. So these things are set up. But apart from this, in the Sitecore documentation, I also saw something regarding the ID meta tag, and so that it understands that this particular document or a page is in two different languages. So can you talk briefly about that? I mean, I wanted to basically
I
understand all
yeah.
configurations in CC that are needed.
Yeah, 100%. So when you are defining the sources, when you create a crawler, for instance, in the crawler, when we were setting up a document extractor, the document extractor has has to have the logic to extract those. If I can share my
Mhm.
screen quickly. So in here, if I go to one of these, for instance, let me go to the triggers and document extractor. Now, if you see this document extractor that has been created, this is not doing any ID. Although ID is a
Mhm.
required attribute, that means it should go ahead and throw an error, right? Because if I go back into the domain settings and look at my attributes, the ID that I have, it's a required attribute. But what Sitecore search is doing for you is that it is taking care of this ID. It generates an ID based on the URL for you, rather than
Mhm.
you doing anything. So when I was running this search here, not this one, the demo one. So if I click on one of these, you will see, I don't know why it goes banana for a second. My Chrome is not doing great. But if you look at this, when I clicked on one of the documents, it is saying that we have created a detailed page. And if you see, this is the ID that got generated for that particular page. Now, this ID is based on a URL, right? And it is automatically getting generated by Sitecore search. Now, what if you have two different versions of this same URL? What will happen in that case? It will go and create the same ID for two different documents, one for French, one for English. But because the
Mhm.
ID is same, you might have just a single representation of two different documents. So if we think it from that perspective, website has two pages. They should be treated as two different documents, but because ID is auto generated, that's where this is what's happening. In that case, what you can do is that you do have the option when you're creating this source here, what that documentation is saying. When you are creating the source, at that time, don't leave it to Sitecore search to create this ID for you, but go ahead and set up your own ID. And it could just be a random GUID, for example, or it could be a hash value of that URL plus plus the language, plus the language part. So let's say you have the URL abc.com slash about page, and then you append slash fr or slash en and generate a hash of it and set that as an ID attribute here. That should that should uh, that that should be the way to go when you have multiple locales. Does that answer
Understood.
your
Okay.
question?
Mhm. Yes, it does. Yeah.
That's cool. Cool. Unless there is any other question, maybe we
Yep.
should wrap